So the Hasselblad XPAN is a legendary camera, but as I'm looking at the prices here on eBay, it is about $5,000, the Fujifilm TX-1 version slightly less. So is this camera still worth it in 2022 and beyond? I'm not gonna keep you in suspense. For me, I definitely think it is worth it. It's one of my favorite cameras, if not the favorite camera that I ever used, ever of all time. But in this video, I'll tell you why exactly I love this camera and why I think it's worth it, but also who this camera is not for and why you might want to avoid getting it. So first of all, to clear some confusion, there's two different versions of this camera. There's the Hasselblad version, the black one, the one that everybody thinks of when they say the XPAN, but there's also the Fujifilm TX-1 version. There's no difference between these two cameras except the way that they look. The Fujifilm version was sold in Japan, while the Hasselblad version was sold in Europe and I believe North America. But there's a bit of a price difference. The Hasselblad version tends to go for a little bit more simply because I think it looks cooler and it's more famous. But if you search for Fujifilm TX-1, you see about $500 to $1,000 worth of a discount. And that is of course the reason why I've got mine as the Fujifilm version as well. Do I regret not getting the cooler XPAN black version? Maybe a little bit. Also, it's a little bit confusing as a YouTuber having to keep explaining this difference every time in case people are confused. But at the end of the day, is it worth a $1,000 difference? Probably not. So the reason number one I like this camera is the panoramic format, and obviously that is the main selling point. But I have to say, when I first heard of this camera, when I heard it's a panoramic camera, I misinterpreted what that means a little bit. I thought it might be a little bit of a gimmick, and the reason I thought it might be a little bit of a gimmick is the way that I interpreted it in the beginning is I thought you could just get the same results by cropping an image. So I thought the way that they made this camera is by doing a wide angle lens and then cropping it tighter. But that is not how this camera works. This camera is, as the main lens is 45mm, so this camera literally takes panoramas. It just takes a wider shot of the scene, but in 45mm field of view or look. So it looks very distinct. It looks exactly like a panorama would look, but it doesn't look the way that you would expect. And it's difficult to explain if you've never seen photos taken with this camera, or especially if you never used it. But it's a very unique look, and of course for maybe landscape photography you could simply take normal panoramas, but when it comes to shooting anything else, when it comes to shooting street photos, that is not something that can be replicated in any other way other than using a panoramic format camera. So much so that I would actually like to try out the digital XPAN as well someday, because it's such a unique look. The way that it conveys depth is really unique, and just composing photos with it is so much fun, and that is the main reason why I love this camera. And it's definitely not just a gimmick of some sort, which also means that you can't replicate the effect with a budget option. You really need a panoramic camera to get the proper effect. The second reason I think this camera is worth it because it is genuinely high build quality. It's a Hasselblad lens. When I first shot this camera and I've got the first scans back, I was very surprised just at how sharp the photos were. Before this, I never used a premium film camera. I've used, basic SLRs and point and shoots, and I had no idea film photos could be this sharp. I didn't realize they could rival digital photography in terms of clarity and sharpness. But when I got these scans back, it was immediately obvious why the system costs so much money. It is legitimately on par with Leica quality lenses. It is not just a basic gimmick camera that is expensive because of rarity. It is genuinely high build quality, high quality everything. Very sharp. And honestly, that makes me really happy. I'm really glad they didn't just make a basic nifty 50 mass-produced garbage lens and slap it on a panoramic camera. They actually made a legitimate Hasselblad lens. Now there's 3 lenses for this system. I only own the 45mm because I never felt like I needed a different kind of field of view, at least so far, but I believe that is the same for all those other lenses as well. And the third reason I believe this camera is worth the money is simply because, well, it's not gonna get any cheaper. The only way it's gonna get more cheaper is if everybody stops shooting film, which probably not gonna happen, or if Hasselblad starts making it again, which also is not going to happen. Meaning that if you buy this camera and you don't end up liking it, it's not going to crash in value. It's gonna be some trouble selling it again, but it's not gonna take a long time to find a buyer if you price it reasonably well. It's gonna retain its value, and it's gonna continue getting more and more expensive as time goes on. So if you want to get it, it's probably a better idea to get it sooner than later. Now, what are some of the downsides of owning this camera? And we're not going to be like, oh, it's expensive, because that's obvious. I'd say the number one struggle that I've had with this camera is the fastest lens is the 45mm f4 lens, which means shooting this in low light not as easy as you would expect, or just as easy as you would expect shooting an f4 lens. But that means if you like night photography, you're either gonna have to have very steady hands or use a tripod. Now, I've actually managed to shoot it at night, but it definitely is not easy. If you want more information about shooting this camera at night, check out the last video I did. I'll link it in the description. But it's definitely a big limitation of this camera. I don't know if the f4 lens is f4 because of something to do with the way panoramic formats work, or if it's just like something that Hasselblad never wanted to do, a faster lens. It would be really helpful to have an f2.8 lens for the system, but doesn't exist, unfortunately. The second reason this camera may not be for everybody is that the format doesn't necessarily work on social media, especially Instagram. So if you're someone whose main goal at the moment is to grow their Instagram account, this is not going to work on Instagram. These photos require viewing on big screen, or at least, you know, Twitter, where you can actually flip the screen. But on Instagram, it's just not possible to share these and have the full effect. So depending on who you are, depending what your goals are, may not be the best social media content creating tool. And the third reason I would say is that it has electronic components. It's not a mechanical camera, which means that it uses batteries, and if something breaks in the electronics, then this camera is not going to work, which means that it's going to be a pain in the ass to repair. It's not going to be easy. And for that reason, especially because I like shooting it in the rain, it makes me a little bit nervous, because I'm not looking forward to having to repair it and looking for someone who actually knows how to do it. But so far, it's been completely fine. Now, if you do want to purchase an XPAN, I would say if you're going to spend this much money on a camera, you probably want to get the mint condition one with a lower shutter count, because of just what I just mentioned. You want to minimize the chances of it breaking on you, and if you buy one that's been used quite a lot, there's probably more possibilities for it breaking. When you're choosing the version of the XPAN that you might want to purchase, the black XPAN has some problems with the paint coming off, so it's not going to look completely new. It's going to look a little bit rugged. It is not a problem that can be avoided on the black painted XPANs, the Hasselblad versions. The Fujifilm TX-1 does not have the paint peeling issue, so this one still looks basically as good as new. And I bought a mint one with a shutter count of 25, which means it only had 250 photos taken with it in the past. So that's going to be a little bit more expensive, but I think it's probably a good call. But of course, it depends if you get a good deal or not. Now, for the record, I've owned this camera for about 7 months and had no real problems with it so far. And every time that I use it, it impresses me more and more as I get used to composing with it. It's just the most fun camera that I ever had. So in my opinion, yes, do you have a kidney? Do you have a car? Sell it and buy this one. You're not gonna regret it. If you're new to the channel and you want to see the XPAN in action, I have a lot of videos with it on the channel, a lot of vlogs. You can check those out. And be sure to like the video, and if you have any questions about the camera that I did not touch upon in this video, I'm happy to answer any comments. And before I end the video, here are some of my favorite photos I've taken with the camera in the past 7 months. Thank you for watching, see you next time.